Yes, so my name is Suyen. I'm a librarian at NUS Libraries. My specialization actually is mostly on business resources. And I used to be your neighbor right next door down the hill at the business library, Honsisen Memorial Library, which is right next to the business school. Unfortunately, the whole building now is closed for renovations, and I think the estimated time that it will be complete is sometime next year. So I am currently working from home, and I will also be located at the central library until the renovations are done. And the unfortunate thing is that if you do want to access any of our print resources that were available in the Honsisen Library, you will have to go down to Central Library to look for them. So it's a bit of a walk. I think it's probably close to a 10-minute walk from where you are, or you can take the bus, the internal shuttle bus, which should take about 6 or 7 minutes. Yes, but Central Library is also undergoing renovations, but quite a few of the areas are now open. And if you need a place to study, we have quite a few spaces available in Central Library that are quite conducive for studying. So you can come down and have a visit with us. Uh, right. So today we'll be covering two things: patents, very briefly, as well as business resources. So let's get started right on the intellectual property and patents part first. Let me just, okay. So, as you all know, right, there are various types of intellectual property. So for instance, right, on any product, such as an Apple iPhone, right, there can be more than 1,000 different types of intellectual property rights attached to one product. So it can include things like trademarks, registered designs, copyright, so such as the operating system, or in a book, for instance, the text that's in the book or video, the content that's in the video. And then, of course, there are patents. So any kind of innovation or functions that have been created and filed for. So these are the patents, right? So if you are interested in finding out more about patents, we actually have a library guide that's available, so you can actually go through to get more information and look at more resources that are available on patent information. And patents actually take an incredibly long time to get granted because filing for the patent will take a lot of time, and usually you have to talk to a lawyer who specializes in patents in order to ensure that your documents are up to par for submission. And once you apply, it will take about 18 months before it gets published by the patent office, and then subsequently it may take years before the patent is actually granted. So generally it will take a few years from the time that you file to the time that it becomes granted. And usually the protection, right, once it's been granted, started from when you applied. And generally you also have to pay for the filing, and then you have to pay for maintenance fees every year. So sometimes patents may get abandoned or they expire earlier than the 20 years because the inventor or the assignee, right, has stopped paying for the maintenance fee, probably because cost benefit analysis is not worthwhile keeping up a lot of these patents. So generally, if you want to know more about what a patent document looks like, there are certain standard contents within a patent document. They're all usually configured in the same way. So usually we ask you to look at certain key elements. So usually the cover page will contain the most important information. So things like the patent number, what type of patent it is, like the classification, and the inventor and assignee name. And usually the assignee is more important because the assignee is the one who holds the financial rights of the patent. So very frequently, for instance, like the Apple patents, right, the inventor is the actual staff who came up with the invention. So maybe an engineer, maybe a software manager, or a industrial engineer, that sort of person. But the assignee is the company that owns the rights to that patent. Then there are drawings if there are any kind of physical functionalities, right, there will be drawings attached to the patents, and then the description, and then most importantly, there are claims. So the claims are the core of the patents, where it tells you, what this patent is for, what this innovation is supposed to do, or what problem it's supposed to solve, right? So these are generally the common contents within the patent document. Right. So for searching for patent information, right, it's part of this whole ecosystem of data, right, that you have to keep in mind, and they're all interrelated, in order to get a better understanding of your innovation and how it sits within the whole a larger frame of information of data out there, and how it fits with the different industries, and also getting an idea of like who is likely to file for certain patents, which companies are likely to be more interested in certain R&D. So, just searching for patent information only gives you part of the picture. You actually have to look at certain things like the businesses that are involved and the countries that are involved for certain industries. There are statistical information that will be helpful because it gives you an idea of the market size. So one example I like to use for my business classes, right, is that the market size for mobile phones in Singapore is way bigger. It's about 100 times larger than, say, for insecticides. So when you go into the mobile phone market, right, if you're looking at a 1% market share, the amount of money that you're thinking, the amount of revenue you're thinking of, is going to be a lot bigger than if you're thinking about a 1% market share of the insecticide market. So it helps with your financial planning, it helps with your cost planning, and it helps with your expectations about what you want to, what kind of revenue or what kind of pricing you want to place on your innovations if when you want to go into the market. And of course, current affairs are also very important because you want to be sure that you're not hitting any kind of unexpected road bumps along the way, right? Due to new regulations or new events that have occurred. A friend of mine got into the bakery business just before many years ago, right? Just before there was a crisis about the bird flu. So the cost of eggs went up a lot, and she had to fold her business within 6 months because the cost of her doing business, right, was really unsustainable. So if she had done her research and realized that the bird flu doesn't just mean that chickens and ducks are no longer viable, the cost of chicken and ducks will go up, the cost of eggs will go up as well, she probably would have started her business a bit later. And of course, you may want to look at other kinds of literature, so academic literature as well as conference papers or other resources, right? Working papers that may help you get a better understanding of the kind of research that's going on in an innovation that you're interested in. A lot of you are already, graduate students or researchers in your own right. So we won't be covering this non-patent literature because you're likely to know this better than I do. But if you do need any help with that, looking for papers or using certain resources, especially if they are like engineering resources, science or medical resources, that might be slightly out of your own subject specialization, right? You can definitely contact us, the library. We will be able to help you. So for instance, if you're looking for medical information, but you're an engineering student or researcher, then resources like PubMed and Embase might be useful, but you may not know how to go about using them effectively. I can refer you to my medical librarian colleagues who will be able to help you to navigate these resources effectively. And so forth. So every subject has their own core databases, and sometimes some of these core databases can be a little bit difficult to use for those who are not specialists in those areas. Yeah, so this is the whole ecosystem of information, right, that would be useful for you when you're interested in looking at innovation and patents. So there'll be a few resources that are available, right, for patent searching. So Pathsnet is a subscribed resource, and it is pretty large, and we subscribe to it because that there are certain functionalities within it, right, that are very useful. So such as the landscape building, right, it gives you a very quick graphical idea, right, of where a lot of R&D is being conducted. And then they also have dashboards for both technology and companies, so that gives you a good understanding of the kind of research that is being done, either within technologies or which companies are competing for certain types of innovations. Then lens.org, as I mentioned earlier, is a free resource and it's more for the academic side of things. And they are pretty large and they cross reference with a lot of academic resources as well. And Google Patents is also pretty good. It's just that the search function is not incredibly complicated lah. It is a very, Google definitely has very good search algorithms, but advanced searching may not be as good when you compare it to, say, Pathsnet or Lens. But it is still a very good resource if you don't have access to subscribed resources such as Pathsnet. And I think Lens is also moving into institutional subscriptions as well, although they are still retaining the free functions. Right. So this is just a quick suggestion, right, about how you can start with certain searching. So if you don't have a particular patent in mind, but you have a particular area of technology, so one way of searching is by refining it. So you can start broadly with certain terms and then start to refine your search, because a broad search is likely to give you a huge number of results, maybe hundreds of thousands or even millions of patents. So not all of them are going to be relevant for you. So you can start to add additional keywords, or you start refining it down to certain classifications, which means that certain types of patents, and then work your way down to a manageable number that you can look through and analyze. Then the other way is that if you have a particular patent that you know is relevant for you, so maybe you are doing something that is that your innovation is actually based on an earlier patent. You're refining it, or you're solving a problem that this earlier patent has. So with that patent, you can start with what we call pearl growing search. You look for related patents that are close to it in terms of, say, the claims or the citations. So what other patents have cited this patent? So if you are used to doing cited reference searching, right, in literature, in academic literature, it's a very similar way of searching for patents as well. You find out what other patents have cited the patent that you have, and then these will definitely be related. Or you can look at similar classification numbers. That means they are definitely within that same type of innovation. So these are quite useful. Or even looking at non-patent literature, so any kind of working papers or academic literature, journal papers, right, that have cited the particular patent, and then you can work from there by using those articles, right, to push your search for additional patents. Right, so accessing Pathsnet is quite easy. You just need to go to our database tab and then search for Pathsnet, and you'll notice that there are several different options. The third option actually leads to our library guide, which gives you some guidance about how to register. And then the second one is the registration page. Why register? It's possible to use Pathsnet without registering, but registering allows you to set up certain functions that will not be available if you don't. So things like having a workspace. So it's basically like a work bin where you can store the patents. And especially if you're thinking about storing several dozen or even a few hundred patents, right? It's probably worthwhile to register and then have that workspace where you can hold on to the patents that you have found, because you can use those to do additional searching, or use it to do your Pathsnet Insights, to do your dashboard, or to use them for your landscape searching. So that's why we always recommend that if you want to use Pathsnet, it's good to register first. Another thing that I like to talk about is that sometime in late August to early September, there will be a change in the portal. So that means our library homepage. We are going to be starting a new homepage during that period of time. And the current homepage, the old one, will still function up until around November. So you may find that certain functions may change over time, but you should still be able to use this current interface until November. Right, so this is just some screenshots about registering, and also please access it from the portal. If you go to, if you Google for Pathsnet and then you try your login there, right, you're not going to be able to get in, because I think the servers that are being accessed, right, from say the general Pathsnet website and our this library one are different, so they won't have access to the user ID and password. So you have to come through our library portal, and then click on that Pathsnet site that was in the previous link, previous slide, in order to access the Pathsnet. Right. So one search that I've been trying is this face mask search. So the concept of face mask now is very important for across the world, and in fact there are health experts are now starting to suggest that we might want to put on a double layer of masks, having two masks on at the same time for additional support. So there might be upcoming innovations about maybe how to add additional layers to the mask to make it more effective, or maybe have different kind of materials that would be more effective at filtering out the virus, or filtering out contaminants, but still retain a certain thinness, right, that will make it comfortable to breathe, because having multiple layers of mask is fairly uncomfortable. Right. So there's a question about NUS alumnus. I'm afraid alumni cannot access Pathsnet, if I'm not mistaken. There are certain resources that are available for alumni, but I don't think Pathsnet is one of them. Just let me have a quick look, right? Let's see. Okay, just give me 1 second to look through. Right. So for alumni, right, if you're interested, you can look at this page. So our library homepage, then there's services for alumni, and then access to e-resources. So there are some that can be accessed from home, where we manage to negotiate with the publishers, right, to get remote access. So these are the resources that are available from home, and I'm afraid, yeah, the Pathsnet is not one of them. And then there are some that can only be accessed on site. That means there's a dedicated terminal within the library, and you have to access those resources specifically from that terminal. Yeah, so I'm afraid Pathsnet is not one of the resources that is available for alumni, but we do have several of these available. Okay. I'm afraid it's not up to us, because one issue is that we can only provide access to matriculated or students or NUS staff, according to the licensing agreements that we have with these publishers. So if they don't allow for external members, right, of who are not officially part of the NUS staff or student population, we can't legally allow access.
Suyan,
Hi.
this is Catherine from GRIP. Hey, hi,
Yes.
thanks
Hi.
for doing this session. Yeah, I just want to share a bit on the locked-in. So GRIP program does actually have some, we actually subscribe to Pathsnet. So we do have some lock-in that we can
Oh,
share.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, so these logins and sharing, we will actually share this after today's session with all the GRIP teams. So don't worry about the access to Pathsnet.
Okay. That's a relief to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah,
Please
because
subscribe.
for us is our hands are tied lah. I'm very sorry to say. We do
Yeah.
try to negotiate very hard, but sometimes
Yeah,
the contract doesn't allow us, so we can't
it's
do
true.
it.
It's
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
All
so
right.
we did subscribe for GRIP program only. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
Hey, no
Yeah.
worries. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah. So using this as an example, right? Let's have a look at what we can do for doing searching within Pathsnet. So sometimes, right, the search results that you might get are very different depending on the terms that you have input. So it's good to set up like like this, you see, where you have a term that you know, and you try to look for synonyms or related words to that term, and try to create a whole list of these keywords, right? And then you input them into your search. So it's a reiterative process, where you input the search and then you look at your results, right? And sometimes the results are really too great, and it's not manageable because you can't look at every single one. So you may want to start limiting it down to say, like, looking only at the claims, for instance, or maybe you just want to look at the title. But sometimes, for patents particularly, right, the titles may not always be the best place to just do a search. It can happen that in patent documents, right, the terms that they use within the title, and sometimes even in the abstract, they try to be more um, uh, vague, not too specific, because that might render their patent, right, too limited. And then maybe there are also some other reasons lah. A patent lawyer also told me that some people don't want their patents to be found, so they will try to obfuscate the description. Um, I'm not a patent lawyer, so I don't know whether that's true or not, lah, but that's what I heard. So yeah, so it may make sense for you to try a lot of different terms, a lot of synonyms, and then apply them to different areas, and also to juggle between, having a large number of results that you can't manage, and having too few results that are not useful, for your purposes. So you can look at all these kind of different alternatives in searching. Right. So within Pathsnet, right, a lot of the Boolean operators, so it's like and, or, not, your quotation marks, your parentheses, and all that, can all be used. So you can make use of this to your advantage. So for instance, if certain words must occur within the patent document, you can use the and. If there are certain synonyms for the word, so for instance, you may want to put like fabric or paper, or a woven, or, etc. So you can actually add the ors to expand your search, rather than doing separate searches with all the different related terms. And then there are also what we call proximity searches. So certain words have to occur very close to certain other words. So vitamins, for instance, in this one, it has to be within 5 words of nutrients. So if the word vitamin is, in the top of the paragraph, and the word nutrient is somewhere right at the bottom, right, then that is not considered a relevant search, a relevant result. Right. So you can actually start to do a sort of like a table, where you start to work out, right, all the different keywords, the important components of your innovation, right, and you list them out in this way, and then you can start to add different alternative terms or alternative keywords into the table. So that way you can start to match your all these different terms together, right, and then build up your search. This can sometimes get incredibly complicated. If there are any medical researchers here, when you do a systematic review, your search, right, can be like a whole paragraph long, because you're trying to insert all the possible terms that are related to your topic, and you have to make sure that you're not missing anything out. So it can get very complicated. It can get pretty huge, but it helps to be able to get your search results, right, to become both very relevant, but also large enough that you're getting all the results that you want. Okay, so IPC codes, right, there are classifications, so you can find out more from the WIPO website about what these IPC codes are. And stemming basically means that, oh, sorry, just this thing about stemming, right? It basically means that there are certain Pathsnet will automatically add on certain letters to words. So for example, if you put breathe, right, it will put like breathable, breathing, for instance, or breath, to the search. So you don't have to add in all the variants of the same word. Yeah, so that would help. But if you don't want that stemming to occur, then you can actually remove it as an option when you're doing your search in Pathsnet. So for instance, let's say I want to look for, say, virus test kits. So if the test, right, it can also be like testing, but it could also be like, a particular organ. So you don't want some of these terms, you can actually stop the stemming to, and just focus on that one particular word. So if you do a search like this, for instance, you will find that you get the results at the bottom, and then you can start to limit your search or filter your search. So families simply mean that they are same or similar patents together. So for instance, when you file a patent, right, in one country, you get protection in that particular country, but not necessarily the rest of the world. So a company or a assignee may file for the same patent, right, in various different countries. So all these patents, right, with their different codes and in different countries are grouped together as one family. So that's why you may see that there are 3,000 over results here, but only 1,000 simple families. And then you can see all the different assignees here, and they're mainly they would be companies. Okay, so a pearl growing search happens like this, where you do your you add in your patent, right, and then you start looking for related patents after this. So there's this similar patent function here where you can click on it to look at the patents that are quite similar in terms of the claims, the abstract, the classification codes, etc. And then you jump from there. So you use this patent as a stepping stone to look for additional related information. Right. So I have a short poll that I like to find out, why do you think is the most important reason for searching for patents? So just a very quick one. So hopefully if I can get at least about 20 responses. Okay, I'll give it another 10 seconds. Okay, so I'll end the polling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's have a look at the results. So most of you want to know if your innovation has already been patented. Yeah, so that's a very important thing to note when you're searching for patents. You want to know whether you are already doing something that has already been patented, because that would mean you need to look at alternatives. Companies who might have patents similar to innovation, that's also very good for business planning, because those companies who are doing R&D similar to your innovation, right, are very likely to be interested in buying over or forming some kind of partnership with you, because they are already invested in that area. Yeah, and finding related technologies. So that's a pretty good one as well. So nobody put the other reasons. So we will just move on to the next one. Okay, whoops. Let me just close this. Clicked on the wrong button. Hang on, let me go back here. Okay, so the next poll is the next poll I'll have to do later. Hang on. So let's have a quick look at the Pathsnet search function, right? So let me see. I have it somewhere here. When you have too many windows. Okay, here we go. Right, so when you're logged into Pathsnet, right, this is what you're going to see. And you see that there are actually different ways of searching. So the simple search is, if you have a company name or you already have a patent number, you can just plonk it in here. But there are other functions that might be useful as well. So let's say if you have a list of patents, that you want to search for, right? Or maybe you already found it, say in Google Patents, so you have this bunch of lists, and you want to move this into your workspace, do your analysis and all that. So you can actually grab the patent numbers, all of them, and then just put them in here, and then you can grab it up. So the bulk search, you see, it tells you that it can support up to 5,000 of these patent numbers, right? So you can actually just do a bulk search in this way. The semantic search is what I really like, because it allows you to actually grab at least 200 words. So you can grab like the abstract of a working paper or a conference paper or a journal article, and then you paste it into this box, and the Pathsnet will analyze the text for keywords, and then pull out patents, right, that match those keywords. So I think that it's sort of an AI search. Well, it's a very smart algorithm lah, in certain ways. So uh, it can help with matching, with some research material that you have to actual patents that have been filed. So that's one way. Instead of maybe you need to crack your head about, what are all the different keywords that I need to come up with for this particular innovation, you can just grab an abstract and then put it in here. So these are the different ways of searching, right, in Pathsnet that are pretty useful. Okay, so yeah, so that more or less covers it. There are actually a lot of help guides, right, that Pathsnet has provided here. So that's why I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail, because a lot of these videos are actually very useful. So if you look at their help center, right, they have all these different short videos that help you to understand better, right, what all the different functions, especially like the workspace, how you can set up your workspace, set up your updates and alerts, or even like share the contents within your workspace. And then if you're not too familiar with like Boolean searching or how to build up your queries, you can actually try out some of the videos here as well. Yeah, so it's actually very useful to look at some of these guides that are available already in Pathsnet. And also because the interface changes from time to time, so we find that when we do a guide for Pathsnet, right, today, in another 3 to 4 months time, we actually have to do a lot of changes to it, because they've made some changes to their interface or to how the searches work. So we find that, let's just point you straight to the horse's mouth would be the best option. Okay, then the other option, right, is called Pathsnet Insights. So this is the one where you get to do a lot of analytics, and you can actually create analysis, right, based on technology or the company dashboard. This one is pretty new, the competitive dashboard. So I've not really done a lot of search in this yet about the competitive part, but mainly on the technology and company dashboard. So it allows you to sort of like look at your list of patent results, right, and it helps to sort of sort out and analyze, right, the different technologies that are involved in the patents that you have found, and sometimes some of these patents, right, Pathsnet has already assigned certain values to them, so dollar values to the patent. So it'll give you an idea about how much some of these patents are worth, etc. Hang on, there's something in the chat. Oh yes, translations are available in Pathsnet. So okay, translations are available in Pathsnet, but they use Google Translate. So what happens is that when you encounter a patent in Pathsnet, right, that is, say, in Japanese or in Chinese, which is very common because a lot of patents are patented in Japan and China, or Germany, etc. And there's a translate option within Pathsnet, but that translate option, right, actually goes to Google Translate, which a lot of websites do lah. And but I find that it's actually quite good. It's actually pretty good. It seems to be better than the actual Google Translate webpage for some reason, grammatically at least. Because I find that when I plonk text from a website into Google Translate's webpage, right, the grammar is a bit odd sometimes. But I find that in terms of the documents within Pathsnet, right, it still seems to work pretty well. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about language. And in fact, if English is not your first language, you can also try translating the English patents into the language of your, that you're more familiar with, to see whether that helps you with that better understanding of the document. Right. So that covers the Pathsnet search. So I'll leave you to try these out. I will be setting up some slots, right, for clinic, what I call clinic or consultations, where I can work with the individual teams, right, where on your topic. So if you try out the business resources today and the patents resources that I introduced today, and you still encounter issues, you can always contact me, right, and we can set up a consultation where we can look at either alternative resources or possibly different ways of searching in these resources, right, to get better results for your topic. Yeah, so today is more of an introduction to sort of give you awareness of these resources first, and then you do a deep dive into some of these resources, and then when you encounter any issues or problems, or there are certain things that you want to learn more about, then you can get back to me, and then we can really do a more focused kind of consultation on your topic. Yeah, so let's move on to, yeah, so the next poll is more to test you. So as we mentioned earlier, right, what kind of searches are available within Pathsnet? So I have to test you on this because I also have to send this report to my boss lah, and tell them, yes, the participants have understood what I'm saying. They're not all like doing their own work while they're here. Right, I'll give you all another 10 seconds. So as long as I get around, say, about 40 people to answer, that's pretty good. Right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and polling. Right. Right. So the correct answer is all of the above. You can do bulk searching. So you can grab a whole list up to 5,000 patents, put them into the search. You can do semantic searching, where you can just grab uh, uh, a text from article or book and put them into the semantic search. Or you can do advanced search, which I didn't really talk about, but you notice that it was there, because the simple search, you can just put in any keyword you like. But if you want to focus on a particular field, so for instance, the assignee field, you want to put in the company name, or you want to search in the claims for certain keywords, you can use the advanced search. And it's pretty much the same as other databases, which is why I didn't cover it, because it's a very familiar kind of search function. You got your fields that you can limit it down to, put in your keywords, and then you do your search. Right, so let's move on. Right. So, the more advanced functions, right, on patent analysis, right, is that you want to get a better idea of the technology. So it's not just looking at particular patent documents. You want to see overall, where are patents, in which industries or in which technologies patents are being filed for the most. That helps you to look at the trends of research, because at the most basic level, right, that's where all the money is going. You see, more money is being channeled in that area, so more research is being done in that area, more patents get filed. And then who are the companies or research institutes, right, that are doing a lot of this research there? Because those are your potential partners, customers, or even competitors, right? So it helps to look at the patent, to do an analysis once you have your results of patents. So the landscape tool, right, is actually pretty is actually like a contour map, and it's based on the classification codes, the CPC and IPC classification codes, as well as a semantic analysis of the keywords within the title and abstract of the document. So if you want to understand better how these landscape maps are generated, right, there are a couple of links here available within Pathsnet that gives you a better idea, right? So when you do a search within Pathsnet say on the face mask, right, with all these different terms, you will get a landscape map, something like that. And it's an actual 3D map, so you can actually shift the map up and down. I'm afraid my internet connection is not the best right now. So I find that when I try to generate this landscape map, it will it will just keep generating for several minutes. So I'm afraid I can't do the actual real landscape map today. But basically, this map, right, can be manipulated, so you can actually shift it to look at it straight on, or at a more flat level, or you can actually select certain grids. So these are uh, actually in square grids that you can actually select to focus on those particular areas. So each of these grids are actually like a cluster of similar technologies. That means the IPC code or CPC codes are very similar within that particular grid. And then you can even sort out, right, who are all the different assignees, right, and assign them different colors, so that you can start to see, all right, company A has most of their R&D in this area, company B has most of their R&D in that area. And that allows you to sort of get a better idea, right, of what all these different companies are doing their research in. And the higher the peak, the more patents have been filed in that particular area. So if you see this, right, you notice that this one is pretty much almost white. So that means there's a lot of patents filed, right, for this kind of purifiers or portable air purifying equipment. So because this area of technology can either refer to those kind of purifying masks, or masks with like carbon filters, or even like machines, that filter the air, and then you put on to breathe the filter air. So uh the landscape map, right, I have to give you a warning. You have to make sure that your computer is up to it, because for slower computers, right, generating this landscape map may take quite a while, because I think it really does take a bit more power from the CPU to generate this. So try to use a more up-to-date computer. My computer is pretty new. It's just that my internet connection is not up to speed, right? So and especially if you are dealing with thousands of results, the more results that you are channeling into that landscape map, right, the slower it will be to generate the map. Yeah. And then you can actually also regenerate the map by filtering further. So like only looking at certain groups of companies, or only looking at certain grids. So you can select, they don't have to be adjacent grids, so you can select the four corners, for instance, and then filter it down to just those patents. Now, there's this one, right, is more on certain issues. So let's say if you come up with a result of, say, like 300 patents, right? But then when you generate your landscape map, you find that, how come only 250 patents are showing up within that landscape map? That's because, right, there are a couple of issues uh with the results, the search results. There's a difference between the search results and what can be used to generate the landscape map. And the difference is, if you try out these two document numbers, right, publication numbers, you find that these, if you put them in your workspace, it won't be involved in the landscape generation. And that's because the EU one is a design patent, so it's not a functionality patent. So what they call a utility patent. Okay, so utility patents actually do something. They are meant to solve a problem, or they're meant to do some action. But design patents are more on the designs. So how something looks, or how it's shaped, or etc. So these will not be involved in the landscape patent, because they're not about the utility and functionality. The other issue is the UK number that is involved here, the GB one, the Great Britain number, is not an actual patent publication. It's actually a publication on that provides some information about an applied patent. That means somebody has applied to file a patent for that document. So it's not actual publication, not actual patent, and it's not assigned the IPC or CPC code. So these also will not be included, because they're not actual patent filings lah. So that may explain, right, why you have a discrepancy in your results list and the landscape map that is generated. Okay, so there are certain tips that you might want to look at when you're doing your analysis, right? The landscape map is based on how many documents that you have retrieved. So how specific it is depends on the size of the results. The landscape is useful because it helps to map out, and then it tells you all the different technologies that are on that map. So it can give you like a big picture look. And it's only accurate, of course, as of today lah. So if you do the search today and you do the search next week, the results will look slightly different. Not likely to be a huge difference, but there will be differences because new patents are being filed every day, new patents are being granted every day. Okay, and so of course, ensure that the ones that you are really interested in, make sure that you store them in your workspace so that you don't have to go through the trouble of finding them again in the future date. And you may want to set up certain alerts so that if there are new patents filed or granted during the interim period, right, that are related to your search term, you get alerted of them. Okay, so Pathsnet Insights, right, where you have the dashboards, uh, you can see that it provides you with snapshots, right, about what kind of trends there are in the patents that are filed, the general life cycle, so how long most of these patents will last before the assignee stop paying the maintenance fee, for instance, who are the top countries or top companies that are filing for these patents. So these can be useful for you to get more qualitative analysis of what's going on, the trends for your area of technology. And I think there also might be useful if you need to do a presentation. So a lot of these can be exported as pictures, so you can put that on your presentation slides to give your presentation a better um, uh, an analytical look, where you say that, oh, these are the countries that are involved, so this is why we're moving into certain markets, for instance. So the dashboard actually is quite useful. So in summary, right, there are a lot of ways of looking for all the patents that that you want. There are certain different methods. So you can start small and work your way up, or you can start from a broad search and then refine your way down. Make sure that you save it to your workspace. Set up your alerts. Look at your landscape maps, because you might get certain ideas from the landscape map about where you might want to turn your innovation towards, and especially for innovations that are very uh, flexible in their nature. So there was one in an engineering class where they did a startup, right, on a particular wire that is extremely sensitive to vibration. So it can be set on the skin, right, to detect like even very faint pulses. So that kind of technology can be applied for a lot of different in a lot of different ways. So they could do it for home security, for instance, or they can do it to test like wind frequencies, or look for even leaks in certain areas, or it can be applied in a medical situation where they can put it on patient's skin. So for them, right, it's good for them to look at where the R&D is being applied for this kind of similar sensors, using the landscape map, because then they can know, okay, which are the more viable markets that they can move into for their technology. Then the insights allow you to analyze companies or analyze the technologies and look at the countries that are involved, and look at the general longevity of some of these patents, and also some information on market information. Of course, Pathsnet's market information, um, I'm not sure where they get all their data from, so it can be fairly selective. So you may want to complement the market information they provide within the Pathsnet Insights, right, with the business resources, because that will give you a more holistic view rather than rely entirely on Pathsnet for market information. Yeah, so that covers mainly most of the Pathsnet data. So a quick look at lens.org, right, which is a free database for patents, although they have expanded recently into a lot of different other kinds of search functions lah, and search tools. So They are a free database, so they provide documents, right, from a lot of different patent offices. There are video tutorials similar to Pathsnet that tell you how to use lens.org effectively, and we can have a quick look at what it looks like. Let's see. Yeah, so the patent search here is pretty simple. So you can actually just start a new patent search, or if you have a particular researcher that you're interested in, you can also do a search for that person. And I think you can also do a search by even the ORCID, the researcher's ORCID number, or by any of these kind of different functions. And yeah, this is pretty interesting. So if you're interested in finding out more about Lens, right, they're starting a webinar on July 28th. So the Asia Pac one is here. So if you're interested, you can sign up for their webinar lah. Then previously Lens.org used to have only two searches. One was for academic articles and one was for patents, and it was all on one page. Now they have set up this one where they have quite a lot of different uh, uh, kinds of tools available, which I have not really explored fully yet because it's fairly new. So previously, I used to do their patents and their scholarly work searches here. So these were the two tools that were available. Then they had API where I guess you can connect it to certain web pages to connect to do bulk access or bulk searching. And I'm not sure what all these are though, but I think it's supposed it's like DNA sequencing data since it's a biological tool set. Then citation analysis, user profiles would be the researcher profiles, I suppose. And oh, now they're doing even like rankings of institutions, which makes sense, I suppose, because they have a lot of information about academic institutions based on their patents, the patent documents and so forth. Yeah, so Lens.org is not difficult to use if you're used to certain other databases. So it's a matter of just doing your search here. Okay. Yeah, so if you want to set up alerts or you want to save your records similarly to Pathsnet, you can actually sign up for an account with them so that you can store the patent documents. But that's entirely optional. Okay, so for Lens, right, basic Boolean searching is available as well as the proximity search. So with the proximity search, you actually have to use the tilde rather than say W or N. I think W is used in Pathsnet. So you actually have to use the tilde for this one. And then you can also search on the left-hand side, you can filter or search by certain fields. Okay, so this is an example of a new patent search where you can put in your keywords and then get the results. The ORCID search is done by using the citing ORCID works. So you can actually input a researcher's ORCID number to look for what kind of patents or documents they have produced. Right. So these are some additional tips for both Pathsnet and Lens. So for instance, like looking for classification, so you can add classification search. And this is something that my colleague Milan, because she's the specialist actually for patent information, but unfortunately she's on long medical leave right now, so I've taken over for this. But she's the real expert on this, and this is her advice. Sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, right, there was a patent lawyer who gave a talk for a particular biological science class, right, and I happened to sit in for it, and she mentioned that very often uh, uh, researchers who file for patents, right, they try to obfuscate their documents because they're not really keen on having their documents found. Um, and they will use certain terms, right, to make it less easy lah, or uh, they want to make their document a little more vague so that it expands the scope of their patent. So if they're too specific about certain terms, they might some people may be able to find loopholes within that document, right? And then make use of that innovation, but slightly different way. So for instance, they won't use the word Spring, they may use energy storing means, instead of ball, they might use spherical object. So sometimes you may need to come up with different terms and then try out the searches in order to pull some of these relevant documents out. Right. And sometimes when you are looking for certain documents, you might come across a citation and you're interested, oh, this is a good article. I want to have a look at it. So for those of you who are students and staff of NUS, you can actually make use of our proxy bookmarklet to very quickly get access to the article. So if you encounter a paywall where it asks you to pay for this particular article, right? So instead of having to copy the title and then go back to our Find More and then do your search all over again, just open up your bookmark toolbar on your browser, right? And then insert the proxy bookmarklet onto your toolbar. So when you encounter Springer page, Elsevier pages, etc., just click on the proxy bookmarklet once. And if we have a subscription to that article, you should be able to get hold of it, the full text right away. If you are a graduate student or a researcher and we don't have a subscription, so let's say if you come across a particular article and even after using proxy bookmarklet, you still have are asked to pay for that particular article, it may mean that we don't have a subscription to that journal. But so don't despair yet. You can actually do a document delivery request from us. So you can check out under services in our library portal, right? Look for DDS, document delivery. And if the article is available electronically, right, usually we can get it uh, within a week or so, um, depending on the vendor. But in general, it takes about a week or so. It may take up around 2 weeks if the vendor is a bit slow to respond, or if it's only available in full text, in print form. So let's say like certain older journals, right, may not have been digitized yet, so they'll actually have to photocopy and mail it to us. So that it may take up about 2 weeks. So if you're interested in more information about patents or refresh your information, you can actually check out the guide that's been set up by my colleague Milan. And it will include the different databases, internet sources like WIPO and all that, right? Available, and and some suggestions that may help you when you're doing your search. So you can just check out the LibGuides here. Right. So that covers the patent part of our, I believe that, yeah, that covers the patent part. So, oh, it took an hour. I was hoping to do it in less than 40 minutes. Sorry about that. So, let's have a very short break, maybe about 5 minutes. So we come back at about 3:05. And if you need to get a drink of water, go to the toilet or something, do feel free to do so. We will start the next part of the workshop, right? Uh, let's see, in 5 minutes at 4:05, sorry. So this will be on business technology, on business information. So this is the agenda, and I'll see you all in about 5 minutes. Hey, no rush to get back. We've still got a couple of minutes, but I saw a question in the chat. Lens.org is actually available for free. So you can just click on lens.org or search for lens.org and then do the patent search from there. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about whether you're part of NUS to get access to it. Okay, we'll get started in about 1 minute. Let me get a drink first. Right. So the next part of this workshop, right, is about the connection between business information and innovation. And then I'll give you some introduction, right, to some of the company and industry databases. So the first part I'll try to go over quite quickly because I think you all get a lot of this information from your workshops, your own sessions already. But these are just some of the slides that I usually share with uh, during my business workshops, especially when they're targeted at science, medical, or engineering students. Oops, just have a quick look at the chat. Oh yeah, Doreen, the because Lens.org is available for free, so it's an open resource, so they don't have to, you don't have to worry about the subscription or payment or anything like that. There might be certain functions within Lens.org, I think that is open for payment because I haven't explored all of them yet, but I do know that the academic search and the patent search right in Lens.org is still free for now. Mm. Yeah. So one thing that I usually tell a lot of non-business students, right, is that when they want to market an innovation, they have to know the market. So they have to know a lot of the details about it. So like the size of the market and demographics. What are the trends in within that market? Are there any risks involved in entering a particular market? So these are things that they have to find out before they start doing their business planning. Then they also have to look for their competitors. Are there already existing solutions to the problem that you're trying to solve? Are you reinventing the wheel? Are you entering a market where there's already entrenched players within the industry, right? That you're trying to get into, so that may form further obstacles to your growth or to your entry. And of course, knowing your customers is very important. Who are companies or people or consumers who can be your partners or customers, or even buy you out, buy your innovation. So these are some of the essential facts that have to be known. So not just the science side, but the business side. So this is something that I picked up from Frost and Sullivan, which is one of our technology databases, but they contain a lot of market information. And I find that this table is actually very useful. It's an assessment of how they do their reports, a lot of their market reports, and you find that. On the left hand side, right, a lot of this is typical academic research. So they'll look at journals and market research and databases, briefings and publications. So these are what they call secondary research. Then primary research is speaking to leaders in the field, so like the C class, C-suite management, technical people, researchers, decision makers, and so forth. So this is quite typical of for the academic side of research. Then of course there is the patent review. So looking at the patent information to validate your innovation, make sure that it is unique, it is novel, and you're not encroaching on any other uh, uh, innovations that are already been patented. And then looking at the different stakeholders, so who are the people directly affected by your innovations. And then on this side, there's a lot of this market potential. So looking at the business challenges for your market, looking at what are the what they call market potential. So what is the size? How much do you think you'll be able to get out of it? if you enter a particular market, and what are the drivers that can push this your technology if you enter the market and so forth. So all this research is a very multifaceted one in order to do your business planning. So I tried to work out, the kind of information that would be relevant, right, for different stages when you're doing your planning. So for instance, at the ideation stage, it's a lot of academic technology research, patent research. Then when you start your prototyping, right, you may want to start thinking about which industry you want to target, because that will affect the kind of prototype that you want to come up with. Then doing environmental scanning of the area. So, looking at the different aspects. So if you want to market in Asia, right, there are certain kinds of cultural issues, social issues, legal issues, or even climate issues. So certain materials may not be suitable for the Asian climate, that would be suitable for, let's say, the northern climates in Europe. So a lot of these different factors have to be considered when you start doing your prototyping. So some of this information can be garnered from different databases, because they can give you some insights into what are uh, the legal landscape, social landscape, cultural landscape, even political issues that are in a particular country, that give you a better idea, understanding of that country or region. Then when you start working out your value proposition, right, you may need to get statistical information, data about price and costing. Say what is the cost of, say, certain raw materials that you require. And there are even like we have a database called EIU City Data. So let's say if you want to actually set up an office or set up a small manufacturing base, right, somewhere, you need to know a lot of nitty-gritty about the cost of setting that up. So what is the general cost of renting spaces there in a particular city, the cost of labor, what are the general educational level of the typical people, labor force within that country, uh, even things like level of corruption and level of um, the ease of getting loans and stuff, right? There are databases like Passport, which provide that kind of information. Then, of course, you need to look at the industry trends. If you want to do primary data collection, that means actually talking or corresponding with people from different companies to get their idea or get their insights, right? There's a way of doing that by using, say, like Orbis, where you can get different company data, and then they actually have staff. The major management staff that's in that company, so you can actually build up a list and start emailing them or even making calls to them. Then, of course, when you start doing your market entrance, you have to do your country research in industry research. And then as you want to set up your pitch or design your presentation, then market research is very important. So you may want to show the people you're presenting to, right? You know the market, you know the size of the market, the demographics, the type of consumers that are within that market, what are the recent developments for that market, and how your innovation, right, can provide a positive impact within the particular industry or market. So these are all the different types of information I think are necessary. This is the business model canvas, which I thought was quite useful for working out, right, all the different types of information that might be required. So based on this, right, there are certain types, like for instance, the value proposition and customer segment in particular, Passport would be probably quite useful, as well as some other databases. So these are some of the questions that may be asked in when you're doing working out this kind of business model canvas. And I tried to work out, right, some of the databases that will be useful for all these different parts of the canvas. It's still not entirely complete, but I think this is pretty good. Yeah, so for instance, like who are the key partners, right? Frost and Sullivan, for instance, can help provide uh, uh, reports, right, that mention all the key players or companies that are producing innovations or doing R&D for particular innovations. Uh, uh, and so you can actually start to pick up names of companies from there, uh, and build out your list of people that you can approach as partners. And of course, like consumer research, right? Usually we will point to Passport. Passport actually focuses mostly on the consumer product. industries. So but they do a lot of consumer insights. So they break down populations in different countries by age, by gender, and look at their preferences, their values when they are purchasing, and any kind of recent developments that may impact how consumers behave within different countries. So we find that actually Passport is extremely useful for understanding the individual consumers. Then of course industry research, we have a number of databases as well. Yeah, so you can have a better look at this later on. So now let's look at more specific resources. Okay, so industry research can be used for instance, like key activities and so forth. So I won't really spend a lot of time on this. This is just something that I did up to sort of like work out how to map the different resources into the canvas. Right. So for key activities, for instance, right, what kind of sectors or industries are useful? And then uh, once you have pinpointed some of these industries, you look at the pain points of these industries to see whether your innovation can address those pain points. Right. So for industry databases, right, we usually recommend these four. And for technology in particular, right, Frost & Sullivan and Gartner are probably the more relevant ones. Gartner focuses more on IT, although they do have things like their hype cycle, right, where they look at more than just IT, but a lot of different technologies because they fit into a particular framework. Uh, these two databases, Fitch Connect and Gartner, unfortunately, you have to sign up in advance. Usually, we recommend you sign up at least 24 hours in advance because they have a white list that they maintain. They need to well, not need. They want to collect user data. Who is searching what. So they will track your name and email ID, your NUS email ID that you used to sign up with. To sign in to the database. And in order to do that, right, their whitelist takes about 24 hours in general to update, although it can be as fast as 15 minutes. But generally they tell us the maximum time is about 24 hours. However, if you have registered and given your permission for data collection for these two databases, and then you try again to log in right through that same link on the next day, and you still come back to the registration page, or you're not getting in, you can email me directly. I will contact the vendor, right, to add your name, your ID in manually, because these glitches can happen, especially I think for Gartner. Yeah, so name sometimes the ID sometimes get missed out, so we usually have to contact them directly to get it inserted. Okay, uh, maybe let's have a quick look at Passport, right? I've done out a quick video on Passport. Let's try this, see whether this works. To sort of show you. So from the database tab again, just search for Passport. And then either of these links will work because it used to be known as Global Market Information Database, which they probably thought was a handful. So they put in the name Passport. This is for those of you who are in other companies, please don't use our reports for anything else. I think Passport keeps track, so they will know. Yeah, so these are the industries. So let me just go back a little bit and pause. Whoops. Right. So these are the industries that are covered by Passport. So you'll notice that most of them are consumer products lah. They have some consumer services. Consumer finance basically means things like credit cards, bank accounts, loans. I think more on the personal loans, not on like the big mega million type of loans. Consumer food service is what they call all the different kinds of dining establishments lah. So cafes, street food, restaurants, etc. Those bubble tea places and so forth. Retailing are retail outlets in general, and then travel are leisure travels lah, mostly. And then they do have, for those who are interested in doing like if you are doing food products, we have like the food science students, right? So they are quite interested in this part. So all the different types of ingredients that go into consumer products. So not just food products, but things like colorants or preservatives, acids, different types of acids, that go into, say, makeup or lotions, etc. So those get included in their research here as well. And then packaging are all the different types of uh, packages lah, so they'll go into even specifics like screw top caps for bottles, or those flip top caps for bottles, or styrofoam polyurethane containers, things like that. So if you are interested in looking at all these kind of different packaging, you can look at the passport research. Then the other part that passport is really good at, right, are uh, business dynamics. So business dynamics is what I was talking about earlier about, the costs and the risks of doing business in different countries. So for instance, setting up a manufacturing base in Singapore can be quite expensive. So sometimes businesses look at the neighboring countries to set up their manufacturing, their factories, and so forth. So if you want to find out, what are the risks and benefit analysis of doing business, say in Myanmar, then you want to look at, say, the political landscape there, how easy to get loans, what is the transportation like, logistics. So they try to provide a more holistic view of this, all the different factors under business dynamics. So a lot of these are actually taken from third parties, like level of corruption, the level of education, average level of education for the adults there, things like that, are actually grabbed from third parties lah. Although Passport actually does a lot of their research, their consumer research, on the ground on their own. Then they have city information as well, so that provides like a more granular analysis of the different cities. Then economy, finance, and trade are mostly statistical information. They have some analysis, but it's not extremely deep. But mostly statistics lah. But I find that usually if you want to get better statistical information or more user-friendly statistical information, you might want to try out databases like Statista, or if you want more comprehensive data, CIC data is actually a good resource for getting a lot of this statistical information, because CIC is quite comprehensive. They grab from a lot of governmental bodies all over the world, as well as certain institutions. So these are not, I wouldn't call it their strong suite, the economy, finance, and trade, but business dynamics is pretty good. Then let's continue. There is, then, oops, I always miss the, hang on. So city information, oh, okay, I did some, excuse me. Yeah, so you can have a look at all the different types of data available for cities in this particular module. So it will provide reports for the individual cities that I think are probably pretty useful. Then one issue is that their search results usually are very mixed. So you notice a lot of these are not actually particularly on the cities, but they might be reports related to the cities that are taken from other sections of their database, but it's added in because they are related to city information. Yeah. So, oops, sorry. So this is from another resource that another presentation that I did. But let's have a quick look at the passport, right? I'll see if I can get in. Because the other thing that might be useful for passport is what they call the lifestyle analysis. I'm a bit apprehensive because my internet connection really is not fantastic today. Uh, okay. It looks good. Okay, so Yes. So the other thing that Passport is extremely strong in, right, is what they call the lifestyle reports. So digital consumer might also be useful if you have if your innovation is based on any kind of digital information. But if you want to get a better idea about the consumer lifestyles, right, it's available here, and this is Euromonitor Passport's owner, right, Strong Suite. They do a lot of their underground analysis to produce this type of reports. So you have all the different country reports available here. Then you have also statistical information, I believe. Oh, not for this one. Let's see. So let's say if we look at Vietnam, for instance, then it will give you the country report for Vietnam. Okay, so there are mega trends, forecast reports, then there are consumer values, so that you can have a look at and the different types of consumers available. So let's have a quick look. These are usually updated yearly, so that's why this one is a little bit on the outdated side. So it'll probably get outdated in a couple more months. So if you want to get a forecast of the lifestyle reports here on consumers, most of their tables and graphs, right, that are within these country reports are usually interactive in nature. So you can mouse over the tables to get a better understanding. Oh, this one is in presentation style, which I really loathe. I really don't like this layout because the resolution is very low. So okay, how do you get around this? So basically, you can download it as a PDF or as a PowerPoint file. Then you will find that the resolution is much better. So some of their reports, right, are instead of interactive format with the tables and text, they do it in this PowerPoint presentation style lah. But what they put online is very low res. So you actually have to download the PDF in order to get a better look. So you find that yes, this is much better. Yeah. So these are qualitative reports, you see. So which is not easy to get hold of elsewhere. Uh, so like in the States, you might get like Gallup polls and so forth. That might be available, but worldwide it's a bit difficult. Yeah, so that's that. Just to give you a brief idea of what's available in Passport. Okay, let's move on. The other one that is useful, right, is Frost and Sullivan. So that might be more relevant for technology. Let me go back to here. Okay, so you can just do a search for Frost, right, and then you get Frost and Sullivan online. I wouldn't recommend using the full name because if you put Frost AND Sullivan, you're not going to get a result. Our local portal search engine is not very smart, so it can't tell the difference between. No, it doesn't know that AND and the ampersand sign are the same thing. Okay, now I have to pray again that my internet connection can hold up. Okay, now Frost, right, is actually quite user friendly. Don't get put off by its interface, which is a little bit non-traditional. Uh, they usually put out a list of reports here, and then they have their different categories on the left-hand side. Still loading. And then they have a very simple search box that's available at the top. But I usually don't recommend using that search box, especially if you have a search that has many different words. So if you have more than 2 words in your search that you're planning to search, right, is I wouldn't recommend using the basic search because it will search for reports, right, that have any of those words that you have input. So let's say if I put in, right, let's say virus test kits, it's going to search for any report that has the word virus, any reports that have the word test, and any reports that have the word kits. So you end up like with a huge load of results, but very few of them will be relevant. So I would recommend using the advanced search instead, which would allow you to uh, uh, to force the search, right, to look for all 3 words. But of course, if you get too specific, then sometimes you might not you might end up not getting a lot of results, because if Frost has not done any reports on those topics, then there might not be any results available lah. But usually they will search within the full text of reports. So sometimes you may be able to encounter some information within reports, even if that report is not particularly on that technology, but they might have a section on the innovation you're looking for. And the chat service actually quite good. They are online most of the time, and sometimes when I encounter certain problems with the searching or with a particular report, I actually use the chat myself, and they usually answer within a minute or so, and they're quite helpful. If you still encounter problem and the chat can't help you, you can always email me. We can try. I'll try get hold of the vendor and talk to them, because I think this email is no longer in use. I think Ellie is not no longer part of the account, but they have not updated this yet. Right. So this is this is based on a search that I did recently lah on mRNA. So it brings out the results. So if you want to see what are the latest reports, you can actually just do a blank search, and then they'll show you what are the latest reports that they have uploaded into Frost recently, and they update all the time. So it's pretty their reports are usually pretty up to date, although not for all topics. Yeah. So if you want to browse through the type of industries that they cover, right, you can just click on the hamburger menu and look at browse. So I just want to give you a brief idea about the industries that are covered by Frost and Sullivan. So these are all the different industries. And you notice that they're not all equal. Some of them have a lot of reports, some of them not so much. Some of them I don't even know why they bother. But they're there. So, but anyway, you can see that the strength of their reports is in like ICT, measurement instrumentation, and then there are subsectors involved. So like semiconductors and sensors. I think it goes down into further. Yes, one more layer. So things like biosensors, lasers, etc. So their strength is mostly in the tech here, and as well as aerospace, defense, automotives, etc. For chemicals and materials and food as well. So like preservatives or different materials, or if any of you are doing like those manufactured meats, they also have quite a few reports on those. Yeah, but on things like consumer products, education, not really. And then even when you click on them, right, you find that a lot of the reports, they have just put them in. They're not really about career research, for instance. So yeah, but the strength is definitely in the more in the technology. Healthcare as well, they have quite a lot of different things on like pharmaceuticals, biotech, which I find quite useful. But you see, the thing about Frost is that very often they will do a report, right, on what they think are the latest trends or highlights in the industry. So there may be certain topics that they look at that they may not come back to again. So sometimes when you do a search for a certain topic, right, you find that, hey, how come they did a report in 2016, 2017, but they have not updated that report? They don't really go do it that way. There are some reports that are scheduled, but a lot of their reports are ad hoc. They find a topic and that is trending, and then they focus on they create a report on that, and they may not come back to it again unless there's been some massive new developments for that particular technology. So very it's quite infrequent lah that they will update certain reports, but there are certain reports that are scheduled, so year on year they will have different they will update that particular type of report. So, as I mentioned, if you do a search, right, it's better to do an advanced search. So you go to the search option here, and then there's this one here, this the magnifying glass with the plus button. So if you want to make sure that all the words that you are looking for show up, you can use this. So let me just do a very quick illustration. At least I hope it will be quick. Let's see. Right, so I get 29,000 results, okay, because it's searching for all these words individually. But if I do it here, right, it says all the words, so that means all three words have to show up. right? And then I do a search here. I should get a lot fewer results. And you find that actually it's actually doing a Boolean. So if you rather do a Boolean on your own, you can do it. You can type it out instead of using this advanced function. But you have to make sure that your Boolean connectors are all in caps. You see, so it goes down to 700 results. So you can see it makes a lot of difference. And the other thing I would recommend, right, is don't limit to the industry, because sometimes they may have a report, right, that is multi-part, because they may have some information, right, on say 2 or 3 technologies or 2 or 3 innovations that are not even related to each other, but they don't individually form enough information to create one whole report. So they'll lump them together into one report, but with 3 different parts. And then they'll put it under a particular category, but 2 of those technologies may not be in that category. So if you really limit your industry here, right, you may miss out on some of these multi-part reports. Then the other thing is also you may want to change the year here. If you want to make sure that your search is exact, has to be exactly those words, you can do an exact match. The broad search would mean that they try to look for synonyms to the terms that you have input here. Then if you do have synonyms that you want to put in, you can put here. Yeah, or if you want to eliminate certain words, so your and or nots lah, basically. Yeah. So, and they're very finicky about uh process. So whenever you finish this, right, you can't just press enter. You actually have to click on the search button. Then after your search, you can actually start to filter here. So let's say if you have certain regions or that's odd. Why doesn't it allow me? Very strange. Because usually I can start to filter here by region, then by country. And you can't filter by country first, so you have to select the region, then the country. So they're very finicky in that manner. Very odd why I can't filter. Uh, Let me try it over on the main page. But yeah, you get the general idea. Lah. And then the reports are generally like slides, but with a lot of information. So they're not really very aesthetic lah, in terms of slides, because there's usually a lot of text within each of these reports. So let's have a look at one of their reports, right? It's loading, right? I hope it's loading. Let me give it another click to see whether that's going in. Yeah, and usually I don't worry about all the different uh, um, colors here, because they have a lot of what they call deliverables, so different types of reports. But in general, if the information is relevant, I will just look at the report. I don't really care what kind of deliverable is available there. It's not really. Let's see. I hope it's loading. Wait. Let me try again. Ay. Oh wait. I'm not sure whether it's the interface or it's my connection. It's probably my connection. There we go. Okay, so the table of contents is on the side. Yeah, so this is like the general slide format lah, that they have. So what I like about the Frost & Sullivan reports, right, is that it's written for the layman. It's usually written for corporate customers. So they don't assume you know the technology very well. They try to reduce the amount of jargon that's inside in the report. And if certain technical terms are required, they will try to explain them. So it's if you want to produce certain reports or presentations for laymen, or say to VCs and so forth, right? You can try using some of the terms that are available in Frost & Sullivan, because it's written in a more general way. And some of their information is actually, I find, quite granular, quite useful, because they try to break down a lot of the different terms and factors within the industry. So for instance, like this one, the market segmentation. So what are all the different airport tiers, which I was not aware of? Then who are all the key competitors? Growth metrics. So they try to do a lot of this for all the different reports, right? So yeah, they even do a history and so forth. So it's pretty they do try to cover a very holistic in a very holistic way lah, the industry when they produce these reports to try and explain what are all the different um, factors uh, for the innovation or the technology. So you can look at all the different table of contents, and sometimes if you're searching for a particular term and you oh, because this is not a search, so I can't. That if you do a search, right, there will be an additional function here that tells you that you can minimize all the slides that don't have your search term inside. So you can only focus on those slides that actually have your term. So let's say if I did the virus test kit, right, and I come across a particular report, I can just minimize all the slides that don't have the term virus test kit inside, and just focus on the ones that do. And then you can actually look at related reports here as well. Then you can download this as a PDF from here. Yeah, so it's for us it's pretty easy to use. Just make sure you keep to the advanced search in order to keep your search more relevant. Yeah, so I will leave you to try out for us. Oof, we're running a bit short of time here. Right. So I won't cover Fitch Connect and Gartner because they most of you will not be able to access them right away, so you have to sign up for them. But Fitch Connect is a little bit fiddly to use, but they do have a range of technologies that of sectors, right, that you can browse and see whether the industries that you think are covered are relevant to you. If not, then you may want to skip Fitch, because Fitch focuses mainly on the industry information for those specific sectors. And the other thing that Fitch does is ratings, because Fitch is actually a European, I think they're London-based ratings company, same way like Moody's or Standard and Poor's are, but they're a little smaller. And yeah, so a lot of the data that's inside Fitch Connect now is about the different ratings of entities, so countries, companies, banks, and so forth. But they produce short daily reports on industries. So they're like little news snippets lah. They are usually about half a page long, and then every quarter they'll come up with a summary report of the industries for different countries, along with graph charts and analysis of how different countries are doing. Again, it's more targeted at the corporate client, so a lot of the information is very summarized, very succinct, very short, and focuses a lot on the corporate industries, the corporate side of these industries. Uh, then Gartner is more on IT, so it's very specific to IT technologies, and they organize their data right in a very corporate way. So they'll do things like logistics, supply chain management, and so forth, or have they have larger overview topics like smart cities, uh, uh, to sort of like incorporate all the different technologies, right, that contribute to that framework or to that concept. But Gartner is also a good place to look for vendors. So that means for companies that are involved in particular innovations. So let's say if you are looking at, say, like 3D printing, right? And then you can actually check out their vendor reports within Gartner, right? To find out who are all the companies involved in doing 3D printing, for instance. But I did get feedback from a few MBA students and master students from engineering, right? That they find Gartner's vendors focus is a bit skewed, because Gartner tends to skew towards the very big players. So the newcomers, the niche players, the smaller companies, right, are not really given as much attention. They tend to always rank, those top ones are the FANG companies, like your Google and IBM and so forth. So the the focus does get a bit skewed lah. So it gives a concept that only the big players are doing anything, and the smaller niche companies are not really involved. So that is I'm afraid I'm not sure because I'm not really very conversant in the IT industry, but that's the feedback that I received from a lot of the yeah from some MBA and master students. Right. So let's move on. So sometimes you need to look at the more mega view, the big picture view on country and consumer analysis. So we do have some reports that may give you some idea about cost structures and channels and so forth. And you'll be familiar with some of these. So for instance, like Passport. Passport is back here again under the business dynamics. EIU.com, right? Actually, it's pretty good if you don't have a good understanding of a particular country. So let's say if you're thinking about, oh, if I move into Vietnam or Myanmar or Cambodia, but I don't really know much about that particular country. What is political structure? How big is that country? What's the general social analysis like? EIU is pretty good because they produce like this very short. Well, not really short, but they do produce a very holistic report that tries to give you analysis on all these different factors: politics, economic, legal, social, etc. Our subscription on EIU.com covers about 41 countries, mostly in the Asia Pacific region, uh, and I think some European countries as well. And then for 16 of these countries, they have country forecasts. If you're interested in the China market, we also have subscribed to a module called China Access, and I think we don't have all the cities, but there are some city reports available and provincial reports available within EIU for China. So EIU is very good for doing like getting a very quick understanding for some of these countries. Then of course Passport, there's consumer trends as well as the business dynamic reports. And then World Bank, I find also very useful because they have country profiles that produce they collect a lot of statistical information, and World Bank is open access, so anyone can access it. You don't need to have a NUS ID to look at the data inside. And then they do a lot of global indicators on economic indicators, social indicators, educational indicators, and so forth. So it can give you a general good idea about like the economic health or welfare of the particular country. Okay, so for company research, so you may have to do very granular research and look at your potential partners, customers, or even competitors. So where are you going to get hold of like specific company information, especially if you want to get hold of financial information on these companies? So we have a few databases that would be useful. So Orbis is usually where I point students to when they want to do financial analysis of lots of different companies, and they want to download a lot of data. So let's say if they need to download, say, a couple hundred companies, right, in Singapore for a particular industry, right, in order to do analysis about the size, or the financial well-being, that sort of thing, then Orbis is definitely the best choice because Orbis has very detailed financial data going back around about 10 years generally for most companies, and they clean the data very well. So across the board, they provide a very detailed financial data, and then they make sure that the data is consistent across the board for all the different companies that they have input. And also you can download several companies at a time. DNB Hoovers, right, is more holistic in their view because they try to provide qualitative analysis in addition to just the financial or like basic information about the companies. The disadvantage is that DNB, right, wants additional payment for downloading more than one company data at a time. So when you do a search and you have, like, say, 60 companies, 80 companies, and you want to download, you have to do it one at a time. If you try to collect them as a table, then they will say that you don't have any credits. So they want to charge lah. But DNB has slightly better coverage of smaller companies. So like the really small private company data than Orbis does. Because Orbis collects a lot of this data from third parties, and sometimes the agreements they have with some of these third party bodies, right, can vary, and they only do selective collection. So for instance, I think for Singapore data, right, they obtain the private company data from ACRA, the authority for registration of companies, right? And every year they will purchase, I think, the top 3,000 private companies for Singapore, which means that a lot of small, really small companies are not covered lah. DNB will go into a little bit more detail because DNB is actually Dun and Bradstreet. They are also a ratings agency similar to Fitch and Standard and Poor's, for instance, and so they do a lot of the collection of data themselves as well. So they are able to provide a little bit more information on smaller companies. But there's also a limit because private companies are private for a reason. They are not obliged to divulge too much of their data. So sometimes the amount of information you can get for a lot of private companies, right, especially some of these smaller startups, can be limited. So that is one issue lah. But DNB also has what they call triggers, where they try to analyze news, right, that may impact the different companies. So whether it will help the improve the standing or the performance of that company, or reduce it. So it tries for more qualitative analysis as well as just the financial information. And I also like to use DNB to look at to create sort of a list of similar companies, although their listing is not entirely accurate sometimes. So for instance, like I did recently a search on biotechnology companies, and the list that I got from their closest competitors is a bit odd. Let me try to see if I can bring up the search again. I think I still have the tab open. Hang on. Oops, I'm logged out. Okay, let me try getting in again. Okay, I would suggest using the term Hoover to search for DNB Hoovers. So is this one here. Some of you who may have done research in the past might know of one source. That was some years back before they got bought over by DNB. Okay, so let's say if I want to do a search, I think I did a search for Beam Therapeutics, which is a biotech startup, I think, in the States. Right, so they do like pharmaceutical manufacturing, or at least that's the category that this is a DNB industry categorization that they give lah, which is a little bit on the general side. And so you usually have to check out whether their website, whether the website they produce, that they provide, right, is the correct one. So when you go in, you can have a look at the different data that's available. Right, so they try to produce things like the risk analysis, overall risk rating, who are the general major senior staff there. I think this one goes into LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, this one is the information that they produce, and then these are the news information that they have on the they're supposed to be for that particular company, and any kind of snapshot of the company that is available. So on the left hand side, you can see that they have certain financials and so forth. But if I want to look at their peers, right? So let's say if I look at the closest companies, the listing is not entirely accurate. So pharmaceuticals, then research development still okay, and then you get architecture engineering. So take their listing with a grain of salt lah, because I find that their listing sometimes can be a little bit skewed, because I think due to their industry classifications, which can be a bit on the general side. But it's still a pretty good place to sort of like, if you need to start building out a list of companies that you want to approach, say for doing surveys or checking them out as potential partners, this might be one quick place to do it for the smaller companies. Because the other resource that I put in my PowerPoint slide, right, Factiva, right, is good usually only for the really big companies, listed companies namely. But because Factiva's industry listing is a little bit more granular than Hoover's, right? So I find that the listings that they create is a bit more accurate. But then the disadvantage is that Factiva only looks at mainly the listed companies. So their information on private companies is not great, except when it comes to say certain news articles. Yeah, so these are all the different like pros and cons for all these different databases. Okay, then for current affairs, right, Factiva is actually pretty good because they have a huge number of sources and they're usually quite up to date. So, for instance, Straits Times articles, right, today's papers should appear within Factiva by around 4 o'clock on the same day. So usually they're pretty up to date and they have articles available in 21 languages. So you can also look at all the different languages for papers, especially if let's say the partners, the companies or the industries that you're looking at may be based in certain different countries. A lot of the articles that are written about them may not be in English, might be in another language. But I believe Factiva has, yes, they have uh, translation available, and they even have like a voiceover, so you can choose like English speaking or British or American voice for that. So if you have trouble like reading, right, you can actually get it to audio version. ABI Inform is actually a mixed database. We use it for both academic searching because they have a lot of academic journals in their collection, but they also have a lot of news magazines, different types of news sources, different types of papers, all kinds of different publications. So it's a mixed rojak lah, basically. They collect from a lot of different sources and put them in. One warning is that sometimes you might see very promising titles, right, which are actually notices or sort of like very vaguely disguised advertisements, right, for market reports that you have to spend a few $1,000s to buy. So sometimes if you put in a particular technology, for instance, like if you do a search for mRNA, right, then you find that, oh, there's this, they say that market forecast, 10-year market forecast report for mRNA technologies, global, 2021. And then you click on it, right, it shows you a table of contents. Then you have to click to a website and then they'll tell you have to pay 5,000 US dollars for that report. So some of the so-called articles are that way because they have bought it from certain publications that produce this sort of ads or notices. Nexus Uni is fairly similar to Factiva because it focuses a lot on news articles. It's not quite as huge as Factiva, but they have certain sources that are quite interesting. They are quite focused because Nexus actually belongs to a legal research company. So they have some of the more legal information. They have some corporate information, and they also have like patent notices. So sometimes it can be quite useful to do a search within Nexus Uni, right? Because they'll produce notices that say that company A has filed a patent recently on this particular technology. So it's a good way to like keep up to track on certain what certain companies are doing or what patents are being filed. Okay, and for those of us who are not NUS students or staff, right? I've tried to compile a list of free or almost free resources. Some of these almost free resources are because if you want to download the full text, you usually have to register your name with them. Uh, so a lot of these market research companies produce blogs, and they have white papers and reports that are available for free. So things like Euromonitor, which produce Passport, right, actually has quite excellent blog that they have white papers on, which I find quite useful lah. They try to do some analysis on like consumer behavior or what are the latest consumer trends, in different countries and so forth. EIU also produces quite a lot of these publications, and of course they have the Economist because EIU actually produces the Economist magazine lah. So you get an idea of the kind of analysts that are behind their reports lah. Then they have market research companies like Forrester, McKinsey, Mintel, right? They also produce blogs. So these are places where you can sort of like pick up uh, information here and there on from these specialists. Then government websites, right? For instance, Enterprise Singapore produces some data reports for free. Export.gov is a USA website, but they are pretty comprehensive, honestly. They produce a lot of these market research reports on different industries in different countries. Their primary clientele actually are businesses in the US lah. So they're trying to provide this body of data, right, to help these businesses move into all these international markets. So they provide a lot of these reports for free, which I find quite useful. They're not Of course, they're not super in depth the way that, say, Euromonitor is, but it's still pretty good because it can give you a good oversight of the market. Then I find that there are certain government websites like industry.gov.au. I think UK has one called Statistical Unit. I can't quite remember the exact name, but all these different countries usually have statistical or market or like enterprise units, right, within the government that produce all these reports in order to help their local businesses export their products and move their market into other markets. Then, of course, there are open databases. So, like World Bank, for instance, is available. IMF is the International Monetary Fund, so they have an e-library that has most of the statistics available for free. The UN has this statistical data portal. And then Statista, right, has two versions. So there's the Statista free version. So sometimes when you do certain searches on Google, right, you notice that they some of the results are Statista pages. So there's a lot of free data available, but they also have premium data, and we have subscription to it. So when you want to access Statista, right, go via a library portal, log in, then you can get hold of all the data. The other alternative is that if you come across any Statista pages that go to a premium page and ask you for payment, use the proxy bookmarklet and then log in, and it should give you the data for free. Yeah, so Statista is definitely a good resource because they are aggregators, so they collect a lot of information from all sorts of bodies. So it's quite useful. So I usually try Statista out for certain statistics that I really can't find anywhere else because there's a chance that they might have it. It might not always be the latest information, but then it might be the only source that you can get hold of without paying through your nose for it. So sometimes the data is a little bit on the old side, like 2018, 2017, but it's still better than nothing lah. Then for those of us who are locals, who are Singaporean PRs or Singaporean citizens, right, the National Library actually has quite a lot of e-resources available as well. And some of them are overlap with ours lah. And so you might be interested in checking them out. Some of them, I think, like they have Bloomberg terminals, but you have to access them from a particular terminal within a particular library. I think the main branch at Victoria Street. But quite a lot of them are also accessible from home. So you can try those out. And of course, they have a lot of the local newspapers available. So NLB is also a good place to look for information if uh, you can't access ours lah. Oh dear, we're running out of time. All right. So last bit. So we have a lot of videos on YouTube, including the recording of this one, which I'll put up as well. And then so if you're interested, right, you can check out our YouTube videos. You can search for NUS Libraries there. And then let me just do a very, very, very quick quiz. Let's see. Hang on. Oh, stop share. Okay. Then uh let's launch. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. So the poll, which database would you use to get consumer data analysis? Consumer analysis. The focus is on consumer, as in consumer products. Okay, I'll give everybody about 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. Yeah, and the answer is passport. So World Bank data has a lot of data, but they do mainly like economic indicators, poverty indicators, educational indicators. Gartner focuses on ICT, on information technology. So passport is the one that does the what you call it, the consumer analysis. Then the very last poll that I have is this one. Right. So just true or false? Is Statista all Statista data available for free online? Assuming you're not an NUS student or staff. Okay, 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and okay, most of you got it correct. Yeah, there's the premium data and the free one. So if you're a student or staff of NUS, just use the proxy bookmarklet or access via our database. But if you're not, you can still access quite a lot of Statista lah, because they data, because it's available for free. If you find any premium pages, just nudge your teammate lah. Okay, so right, so that ends the polling. Okay, so just one last bit is on the feedback. So if you can just spare 1 or 2 minutes, I'll just put the link in the chat as well. Yeah, very sorry that we run over time. But yeah, so if you can give a couple of minutes for the feedback, oops, I'll be very grateful. And yeah, so if you have any questions, let me put my email in the as well. So that's my email address. If you have questions about the different databases or resources, you can feel free to contact me. I will send I'll email out the PDF of my slides, right, to Catherine, if that's okay, to send out to everybody by tomorrow. And if I can get the video up by tomorrow as well, if I can upload it, I will also send a link to the video in case you want to refresh your memory on some parts of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Suyan, that would be great.
yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Catherine. Yeah, so and thank you all for coming in today. So I will end this in about 2 minutes. If there are no further questions, and I'm very grateful for all of you giving me the time today. Sorry that we ran over a bit. I tend to talk a bit much. And yeah, so hopefully we can speak again in the future, and do feel free to contact me, and it doesn't have to be for just group stuff. If you have any queries about your own research for your own studies, or looking for certain information, even if it's not related to NUS one, if I can help you out, I'll definitely do my best.
Hey, Suyan, thanks so
Mm.
much.
All right, so I will end the meeting in about 1 minute. Right, bye everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.